The last person anyone expected to see behind the restaurant after closing was a waitress drinking from the alley faucet. It was well past midnight when Yejuan Payan finished counting receipts in his office. His enforcers waited outside in the black sedan. He walked through the kitchen alone to lock up, but then, a sound. Not dishes, not the walk-in cooler. A faint, uneven gasp echoing from the service exit. He reached for the blade inside his coat. Any other night, someone lurking in his alley meant a problem to erase. Tonight, it meant something far more dangerous. He pushed open the steel door and stopped cold. There, crouched beside the dumpster with her uniform still on, was Evelyn J. Griffith, bone-thin, trembling, lips pressed to the rusted spigot like it was her last lifeline, eye in her apron pocket. A crumpled to-go container stuffed with the burnt rice scraped from the bottom of the pot. The kind the kitchen throws away at the end of the night. She wasn't lazy. She wasn't high. She was starving. And when Yejuan Payan stepped into the light, she choked out the words that cracked something inside his chest. Asterisk. I paid this week. I swear. Please don't tell him I took the scraps. Asterisk. His jaw locked. His pulse roared in his ears. Asterisk him. Asterisk Evelyn. The woman who worked doubles without complaint, who smiled through split shifts, who never once asked him for anything, was paying someone. Now he understood why her hands shook every time she poured his whiskey. The girl clutched the container tighter, as if holding onto garbage would somehow save her job, her life, her invisible war. For a long, suffocating moment, Yejuan Payan said nothing. Then he slowly let go of the blade and did something none of his men would ever believe. Stay with me until the end, because what he uncovered next didn't just destroy one man. It shattered every lie holding his empire together. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. Yejuan Payan didn't announce himself when he arrived. He didn't have to. The shift in air pressure was enough. One moment, the kitchen hummed with the usual chaos, sizzling pans, barked orders, the metallic clang of spatulas against steel. The next, everything muted. Voices dropped to whispers. Knives slowed against cutting boards. Even the dishwasher seemed to spray softer. He moved through the dining room like smoke, black suit absorbing the low amber light, Italian leather shoes silent against the polished floor. The hostess saw him first. Her smile fractured at the edges. She straightened her posture so fast her spine cracked. Good evening, Mr. Payan. Her voice barely made it past her teeth. He didn't respond. He never did. Acknowledgement implied equality. The servers felt him before they saw him. It was a skill they developed, survival instinct dressed as customer service. The new girl, 2 weeks in, reached for a wine bottle with trembling fingers. The sommelier caught her wrist, shook his head sharply. Asterisk, not that one. He'll know. Asterisk, it didn't matter that the label was nearly identical. Yejuan Payan knew his inventory down to the vintage, the barrel, the bottle. In the kitchen, the head chef tasted a reduction, nodded to himself, then tasted it again when he sensed the temperature drop. Yejuan had appeared in the doorway. No greeting. Just those dark, unreadable eyes cataloging every station, every flame, every bead of sweat on every cook's forehead. The chef's hand didn't shake. He'd worked for Yejuan too long for that, but his jaw tightened. The halibut is perfect tonight, Mr. Payan. Would you like me to prepare a plate? Yejuan's gaze lingered on the fish station for 3 seconds too long. The line cooked, there stopped breathing. Then Yejuan moved on without a word, and the kitchen exhaled as one organism. This was his kingdom. Not because he owned the deed. That was just paper. He owned it because every person inside these walls understood a fundamental truth. Yejuan Payan saw everything. The hostess pocketing extra cash from the reservation book. The bartender watering down the cheap vodka. The manager skimming tips. He saw it all, cataloged it, and decided, with the cold arithmetic of a man who'd built an empire on calculated violence, whether it was worth his attention. Most nights, the small betrayals didn't matter. Yejuan had bigger wars to fight, bloodier borders to defend. But every person who worked under his roof knew that mercy was a choice he made, not a right they earned. And choices, in Yejuan Payan's world, could be unmade in a heartbeat. He returned to his office, closed the door, and the restaurant resumed breathing. No one noticed that his gaze had snagged, just for a moment, on the waitress in the back corner, the one who moved slower than the others, whose uniform hung looser each week. Not yet. But he noticed. Evelyn J. Griffith's shift started at 10 in the morning and ended whenever the last table left. Today, that meant 14 hours on her feet. 15 if you counted the extra 30 minutes. She stayed to fold napkins because the night manager said they looked sloppy. They didn't. But she folded them anyway. She moved through the dining room like water, present, essential, never making a splash. Refilled glasses before they emptied. Cleared plates before customers had to ask. Smiled with her eyes when her mouth was too tired to hold the shape. The other servers complained about difficult tables. Evelyn just nodded and took the next one. By 8 o'clock, the kitchen started prepping staff meal. It was one of the few perks of working at Pion's. Whatever didn't make it onto the luxury menu got repurposed for the crew. Tonight, it was short rib over polenta, the kind of meal Evelyn used to dream about when she was younger. The kind that made your whole apartment smell like someone loved you. The servers gathered around the steel prep table like wolves at a carcass. Laughter. Gossip. The sommelier complained about a customer who'd sent back a $200 bottle because it was too grapey. Everyone ate standing up, shoveling food between jokes. Because the 15-minute break wasn't long enough to sit, Evelyn hovered at the edge of the group. She smiled at the right moments, laughed softly when the room laughed. But when the head chef slid a plate toward her, she shook her head. "I'm good, chef. Thank you." "You sure?" "Made extra tonight. Ate before my shift." The lie came smooth, practiced. She'd been rehearsing variations of it for 3 months. The chef shrugged and scraped the portion back into the pan. Someone else would eat it. They always did. Evelyn slipped away before anyone could press her. She moved to the storage closet behind the dish pit, where the fluorescent light flickered and the air smelled like bleach and old grease. She stood there for exactly 4 minutes, long enough for her vision to stop tunneling at the edges, long enough for the tremor in her hands to ease. She pulled a dented water bottle from her apron and drank slowly. The cold helped. Not with the hunger. Nothing helped with that anymore, but with the dizziness. With the way her uniform had started hanging off her shoulders like a child playing dress-up. When she returned to the floor, no one noticed she'd been gone. That was Evelyn's gift and her curse. She'd perfected the art of disappearing in plain sight, but in his office, behind tinted glass that overlooked the entire dining room. Yejuan Pion watched her refuse food for the 3rd night in a row. He set down his pen, leaned back in his chair, and for the first time in years, something besides profit margins demanded his attention. Table 12 left a nearly untouched filet mignon. $42 of Wagyu beef, seared perfect, resting in a pool of red wine reduction that probably cost more than Evelyn made in tips all week. The couple had taken 3 bites between them before the woman decided she wasn't in the mood for red meat after all. Evelyn stacked the plates with practiced efficiency. Appetizers on bottom, entrees on top, silverware nested in the center to avoid the clatter. But when she lifted the steak plate, her hands stopped moving. No one was watching. The dining room had thinned to just 4 tables. The other servers were occupied. The kitchen was slammed with a last-minute 8-top. And the steak. God, the steak was still warm. Her fingers moved before her brain could stop them. She grabbed a cloth napkin from her apron, the cheap ones they used for polishing wine glasses, and in one smooth motion, scraped the fillet into the fabric. Folded it. Tucked it against her hip beneath the apron's edge. The whole thing took 4 seconds. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She turned toward the dish pit. Head down, moving fast, but not too fast, because running meant guilt and guilt meant questions. And questions meant stop. The word cut through the ambient noise like a blade through silk. Evelyn's legs locked. The plates rattled in her grip. Yejuan Pion stood 3 feet behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. She never did. No one ever did. Turn around. She obeyed, because in Pion's restaurant, you didn't hesitate. The plates felt like they weighed 100 pounds. Her face burned so hot she thought her skin might crack. Yejuan's expression was unreadable, carved from stone and shadows. His eyes dropped to her apron, to the slight bulge against her hip, then back to her face. Put the plates down. Evelyn set them on the nearest service station. Her hands shook so badly the silverware chimed. Show me. Mr. Pion, show me. Her throat closed. Tears pressed hot behind her eyes. But she'd learned years ago that crying didn't buy mercy. She reached into her apron with numb fingers and pulled out the napkin. Unfolded it. The steak sat there, accusatory and still beautiful. Yejuan stared at it for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than she'd ever heard it. Quiet in the way a gun is quiet before it fires. My office. Now. He turned and walked away. Every eye in the dining room suddenly finding somewhere else to look. Evelyn stood there, holding stolen meat in a dirty napkin, and understood that whatever happened next would change everything. She followed him into the dark. Yejuan didn't lead her to his office. He turned left before the staircase, toward the service corridor where the industrial freezers hummed and the overhead lights flickered like dying stars. The staff called it the tunnel, a concrete-walled passage connecting the kitchen to the loading dock, where the air always smelled like cardboard and cold meat that no cameras here. No witnesses to Evelyn's pulse hammered in her ears. Her legs felt disconnected from her body, moving on autopilot, following the black suit deeper into the dim passage. When Yejuan finally stopped and turned to face her, she was trapped between his presence and the steel door behind her that he stood close. Close enough that she could see the perfect edge of his collar, smell the expensive cologne that probably cost more than her rent. His face was unreadable, carved from shadow and control. How long? Evelyn blinked. Sir, how long have you been stealing food from my restaurant? The word stealing hit like a slap. I wasn't, don't. His voice dropped to a lethal quiet. I watched you scrape a customer's plate into a napkin. That's theft. So I'll ask again. How long? Her mouth opened, closed. The corridor tilted slightly. She locked her knees to stay upright. I'm sorry. I'll pay for it. You'll asterisk what? Asterisk. Yejuan stepped closer, and Evelyn's spine pressed against the cold door. Work an extra shift? You already work more than anyone else on my floor. So tell me, Evelyn, why are you stealing scraps when there's a staff meal every single night? She couldn't meet his eyes, couldn't breathe properly. The shame was a living thing, clawing up her throat. I'm sorry, she whispered again, because it was the only thing left. That's not an answer. I needed. Her stomach betrayed her. A low, vicious growl that echoed in the silence like a gunshot. Evelyn's face went hot, then cold. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the concrete and never surface. Yejuan went very still. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted, still controlled, but something sharp had entered it. Something dangerous. When's the last time you ate? This morning. Don't lie to me. Evelyn's breath hitched. Her vision blurred at the edges. Yesterday. Maybe. I don't. You work in a restaurant. There's food everywhere. Free food. His jaw tightened. So why are you starving? Asterisk. The question hung between them like a blade. Evelyn looked up at him finally. This man who ruled his empire with silent violence and made a choice. The truth or her pride. She had so little of either left. Because I can't afford to eat it, Mr. Payan. Her voice cracked. I have to pay first. Yejuan's eyes narrowed. Pay? Pay who? And there it was. The cliff's edge. You, she whispered. I have to pay you. Yejuan went utterly still. The kind of stillness that preceded violence. What did you just say? Evelyn's breath came in short, shallow gasps. She was past the point of calculation now, past strategy. Survival mode had taken over, and survival meant confession. The fee. The one Mr. Cho collects every week. He said it came from you. That everyone pays. That if I didn't, stop. Yejuan's hand came up, one finger raised. Go back. Who is Mr. Cho? The floor manager. He. Evelyn's voice fractured. He handles your collections. From all the staff. He said it's how things work here, that you require it, that if we don't pay, we're not loyal, and not loyal means, how much? The question was so quiet, she almost didn't hear it. 30%, she whispered. 30% of everything I make. Tips, wages, all of it. He takes it every Friday before I clock out. Yejuan's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes ignited. Something cold and ancient and absolutely merciless. Evelyn kept talking, the words pouring out now like blood from a wound. I know I'm behind this week. I know I shouldn't have. The steak was stupid. I just thought if I could bring something home to my brother and sister, just once, maybe they wouldn't. Her voice broke completely. Please don't hurt them. They're just kids. They don't know anything about this. I'll pay double next week. I'll work extra shifts. I'll do whatever you. You think I'm extorting my own employees? It wasn't a question. It was a statement carved from ice. Evelyn's tears came then, hot and shameful. I'm sorry. I should have worked harder. I should have found a way to pay and still eat. I'm not strong enough. I'm not. Stop talking. She went silent immediately, swallowing her sobs. Yejuan stepped back, giving her space for the first time since they'd entered the corridor. He turned slightly, his profile sharp against the flickering light. His hand went to his jaw, fingers pressing against the tension there. When he spoke again, his voice was different, still controlled, but now there was something molten underneath. I don't know who Mr. Cho thinks he is. Each word was measured, deliberate. But he's not collecting anything in my name. Not from you. Not from anyone. Evelyn's legs nearly gave out. What? Yejuan turned back to her, and the look on his face made her blood run cold. Not because it was directed at her, but because she finally understood it wasn't. Show me, he said quietly. Show me exactly where this happens. Yejuan stood in the corridor, absolutely motionless, while the full scope of what Evelyn had just told him assembled itself into a clear, devastating picture. Someone was using his name, his authority, his fear, and they were using it to bleed his employees dry. Is it just you? His voice was surgical, precise. Evelyn wiped her face with shaking hands. No, everyone. All the servers, the bussers, the hostesses, even some of the kitchen staff. Mr. Cho says the cooks pay less because they're harder to replace. But how long has this been happening? I don't know. It started my second week. He said it was standard, that Mr. Pion doesn't tolerate disloyalty, and loyalty has a price. She looked up at him with swollen eyes. I thought, everyone acts like it's normal, like it's just part of working here. Yejuan's jaw tightened so hard, she heard his teeth click. And if someone doesn't pay? Evelyn's silence was answer enough. Tell me. Jessica. She was a hostess. She complained about the amount, said she couldn't afford it. Evelyn's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Mr. Cho called her into the office. We heard her crying. The next day, she was gone. He said you'd fired her for stealing. The fluorescent light above them flickered. Yejuan didn't move, didn't blink, but Evelyn felt the temperature in the corridor drop 10 degrees. He'd built his empire on fear, yes. On calculated violence and the kind of reputation that made men cross the street when they saw him coming. But there were rules. Lines even monsters didn't cross. You didn't prey on the people under your protection. You didn't use their desperation as currency. And you sure as hell didn't do it wearing his name like a stolen suit. This wasn't just theft. It was desecration. Where does he take the money? Yejuan's voice was so calm it was terrifying. His office. The small one by the loading dock. He counts it Friday nights after the dinner rush. Does he keep records? I think so. He writes everything in a ledger. I saw it once when I brought him his cut. Yejuan pulled his phone from his inner jacket pocket, typed a single message, put it away. When he looked at Evelyn again, his eyes were flat and black, like stones at the bottom of a well. Go back to the floor. Finish your shift. Act like nothing happened. Mr. Pion, do you trust me, Evelyn? The question caught her off guard. She'd never trusted anyone in her life. Trust was a luxury for people who had safety nets. But standing there, looking at the controlled fury in his expression, she realized something. Yejuan Pion didn't need to ask her permission to destroy someone. He was asking because he wanted her to see it. Yes, she whispered. Good. He stepped past her, toward the darkness of the loading dock. Because someone's about to learn what happens when they steal from me. Yejuan's office had 16 monitors mounted on the wall behind his desk, each one cycling through different camera feeds throughout the restaurant. Dining room, kitchen, storage areas, loading dock, employee entrance. He'd installed the system himself 3 years ago, not because he didn't trust his people, but because trust was a fairy tale men told themselves before they got betrayed. Tonight, he was grateful for his paranoia. He sat in his leather chair, pulled up the archived footage, and started with last Friday, 10:47 p.m. The timestamp glowed in the corner as the employee corridor materialized in grainy black and white. There, Evelyn, finishing her shift, walking toward the exit. And there, Mr. Cho, stepping out of his office like he'd been waiting. Yejuan turned up the volume, but the audio was thin, mostly static. He didn't need sound. Body language told the whole story. Cho's hand on Evelyn's shoulder, stopping her. Her posture shifting, shoulders curling inward, head dropping. The universal language of someone trying to make themselves smaller. Cho's other hand extending, palm up. Evelyn reaching into her apron, pulling out folded bills. Cho counting them, shaking his head. Not enough. Evelyn's hands gesturing, pleading. Cho leaning in close, his finger jabbing toward her chest. Her stepping back. Him stepping forward. Yejuan's knuckles went white on the mouse. He scrolled back. 2 weeks. Same scene, different night. Cho cornering a busser in the storage room. The kid couldn't have been older than 19. Cho's hand wrapped around the back of the kid's neck while he took the money. Almost paternal, except for the way the kid's whole body trembled. 3 weeks back. A hostess handing over cash in the parking lot, glancing around like she was buying drugs instead of paying extortion. 4 weeks. Cho in his office, alone, ledger open on his desk. Yejuan zoomed in. The book was old school, handwritten. Columns of names, dates, amounts. Cho ran his finger down the page with the satisfaction of a man reviewing his investment portfolio. Yejuan took a screenshot. Then another. Evidence that he went back to Evelyn's footage. Found the moment from 2 months ago when she'd first started looking thin. Watched Cho pull her aside after a double shift. Watched her hand over nearly everything she'd made. Watched her walk to her locker afterward and just stand there, staring at nothing, one hand pressed against her stomach. That's when Yejuan saw it. The detail that made his blood turn to gasoline. Cho, walking away from Evelyn, passing another manager in the hallway. The other manager asking something. Yejuan could read lips well enough. Boss know about this? And Cho's response, clear as daylight even without audio. Who do you think ordered it? Yejuan closed the laptop with a control that belied the fury igniting in his chest. Friday night. Cho would collect again Friday night. Perfect. Thursday afternoon, Yejuan sent out a single message through the restaurant's employee app. * mandatory staff meeting. Friday, 11 p.m. Everyone attends. No exceptions. * the announcement landed like a grenade in a quiet room. Mandatory meetings at Pion's were rare, the kind of rare that meant someone had screwed up badly enough to require a public example. The last one had been 8 months ago when a line cook was caught selling reservation slots to a competitor. No one had seen that cook since. Rumors spread through the staff like wildfire. Someone was getting fired. Someone was getting promoted. Immigration was coming. Health inspectors had found something. The theories multiplied with each shift change, but no one knew for certain. And that was exactly how Yejuan wanted it. Cho heard about the meeting from 3 different people before he finally checked his phone. When he saw the message, he smiled. A mandatory meeting meant Yejuan was addressing something important, something that required his floor manager's expertise. Maybe the boss had finally noticed Cho's efficiency, his ability to keep the staff in line, his profit padding system that, in Cho's deluded mind, made the restaurant run smoother. He spent Friday afternoon rehearsing humble responses to praise he was certain was coming. Evelyn, meanwhile, felt like she was moving through water. Every hour dragged. Every table blurred. Yejuan had told her to act normal, but normal felt impossible when her entire body buzzed with anxiety. She caught glimpses of him throughout the shift, moving through the dining room, checking the kitchen, his face an unreadable mask. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge her. It was almost worse than the confrontation in the corridor. What was he planning? By 10:45 p.m., the last customers had been ushered out. The dining room lights came up to full brightness, harsh and exposing. Staff trickled into the main dining area, confused and nervous. Servers still in their aprons. Kitchen staff in their whites. Even the dishwashers emerged, drying their hands on towels. Yejuan stood at the front of the room, near the bar, perfectly still in his black suit. His hands were folded in front of him. His expression gave away nothing. Cho entered last, making a show of checking his watch, playing the role of the busy manager who'd graciously made time for the meeting. He positioned himself near the front, close to Yejuan. Already imagining himself as second in command, Evelyn stayed in the back, partially hidden behind 2 taller servers. Her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. When the last person settled, Yejuan let the silence stretch. 10 seconds. 20. The room held its breath. Then he spoke, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. I want to talk about loyalty. Loyalty, Yejuan continued, his eyes scanning the assembled staff, is the foundation of everything we do here. Without it, This restaurant is just another business. With it, we're a family. The word family landed heavy in the room. Several employees shifted uncomfortably. Family was a loaded term in Yejuan Pion's world. It meant protection, but it also meant obligation. Debt. Consequences to Mr. Cho nodded vigorously, like a student eager to impress the teacher. He crossed his arms over his chest, puffing up slightly. This was it. This was the moment Yejuan would acknowledge all his hard work, his discipline, his management skills. Some of you, Yejuan said, his tone still measured, have been with me for years. You've proven yourselves. You've earned your place here. He paused. Others are newer, still learning what loyalty means. Cho saw his opening. He stepped forward slightly, clearing his throat. Mr. Pion, if I may? Yejuan's gaze slid to him. Mr. Cho, I just want to say, sir, that maintaining standards, making sure everyone understands what's expected of them, it's not always easy. Cho turned slightly, addressing the room now, playing to an audience. Some people get it right away. They understand that working here is a privilege, that privileges come with responsibilities. A few staff members exchanged confused glances. Cho was warming up now, misreading the silence as permission. And some people, his eyes landed on Evelyn in the back. Some people need constant reminders about how things work, about pulling their weight, about respect. Evelyn's face drained of color. Take Evelyn, for example. Cho gestured toward her, and every head in the room turned. Good worker, don't get me wrong. But she's had some trouble understanding the culture here. The expectations. I've had to personally ensure she stays on track. Make sure she contributes properly to the team. Evelyn wanted to disappear, to dissolve into the floor. Every eye on her felt like a brand. Cho turned back to Yejuan, completely missing the way the boss's jaw had tightened. It's managers like me who handle these details, sir, who make sure your standards are maintained at every level. The little collections, the attitude adjustments, keeping everyone, collections, Yejuan interrupted softly. Yes, sir. Cho smiled proud. The loyalty contributions. Making sure everyone pays their fair share for the privilege of, tell me, Mr. Cho. Yejuan's voice was silk over steel. How much does loyalty cost? Cho hesitated, finally sensing something off in the temperature. Sir, you said contributions. Collections. I want to know the exact number. Yejuan took a single step forward. How much do my employees pay you every week? The room went dead silent. Cho's smile faltered. It's your system, sir. I just implement my system, Yejuan repeated, and the air turned to IC.mr. Cho's brain was finally catching up to his mouth. The smile died on his lips. Your system, sir. The one I thought you. I want you to explain it to me. Yejuan's voice remained perfectly level, which somehow made it worse. In detail, how does my system work? Cho's eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit that didn't exist. Every member of the staff was frozen, sensing the shift in atmosphere like animals before an earthquake. I may have misspoken, Mr. Pion. I didn't mean to imply 30%. Yejuan let the number hang in the air. That's what you collect from the servers, isn't it? Less from the kitchen staff because they're harder to replace. He tilted his head slightly. Did I get that right? The color drained from Cho's face. And you collect every Friday. In your office. You keep a ledger. Handwritten. Blue cover. Yejuan took another step forward. You tell them it's my policy. That I demand it. That anyone who doesn't pay isn't loyal. Isn't that correct, Mr. Cho? Sir, I can explain. You told Jessica I fired her for stealing. But I've never heard of Jessica. So where is she, Mr. Cho? Where did she go when she refused to pay? Cho's hands came up, palms out, backing away. This is a misunderstanding. I was trying to help. To maintain order. The staff needed structure, and I thought. You thought you'd use my name to rob them. Yejuan's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but it carried to every corner of the room. You thought you'd make them terrified of me while you picked their pockets. You thought you'd build your own little empire inside mine. No, sir. Please. I would never. How much? The question cracked like a whip. What? How much have you stolen? Total. From all of them. Over how many months? Cho's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Yejuan pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, turned it around so the entire room could see. Security footage. Cho in the corridor. Cho taking money from Evelyn. From the busser. From the hostess. The images cycled, one after another, A greatest hits compilation of theft and intimidation. I have 6 months of footage, Yejuan said quietly. And your ledger? I took it from your office this morning. Cho stumbled backward, hitting a table. The predator's mask had completely shattered. What remained was a small, sweating man who'd just realized he was standing in a cage with something far more dangerous than himself. Please, Cho whispered. I have a family. Yejuan's expression didn't change. So does Evelyn. So do they. He gestured to the room full of staff. But that didn't stop you, did it? Yejuan set his phone down on the nearest table. The screen still glowed with frozen evidence of Cho's crimes. Then he did something no one expected. He walked to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, and took a slow sip. The silence in the room was suffocating. I built this restaurant, Yejuan said finally, his back still to the crowd, on a simple principle. You work hard, you get paid fair. You're loyal to me, I'm loyal to you. It's not complicated. He turned around, glass in hand. But you turned my house into a protection racket. You made these people afraid to eat, afraid to breathe. You used my name like a weapon. Cho was shaking now, hands clasped together. I'll give it back. All of it. Every dollar. Please, Mr. Payan, you'll give it back because you don't have a choice. Yejuan set the glass down with a soft click. But that's just the beginning. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket, opened it. According to your ledger, you've collected approximately $73,000 over the past 6 months. From 17 employees. He looked up. That's an interesting number, Mr. Cho, because it's also a felony. Theft, extortion, fraud. I could have you arrested right now. Please, but I'm not going to do that. Yejuan's smile was colder than his voice. Because prison is too easy, too clean. No, you're going to repay every single person in this room. Double what you took. That's $146,000. You have 72 hours. Cho's legs nearly gave out. I don't have that kind of, then sell your car, your house, your wife's jewelry. I don't care. Yejuan's eyes were black and merciless. You had no problem taking money from people who couldn't afford to eat. Now you'll learn what that feels like. And if I can't? The question hung in the air for 3 seconds. Then we'll have a different conversation, Yejuan said softly. The kind that doesn't happen in restaurants. Do you understand me, Mr. Cho? The threat didn't need elaboration. Everyone in the room knew exactly what kind of man Yejuan Payan was beneath the tailored suits and business permits. Cho nodded, tears streaming down his face. Good. You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. If you set foot on this property again, or if you contact any of these employees, our arrangement becomes void. Yejuan gestured to the door. And Mr. Cho? I have people everywhere. If you run, I'll find you. If you talk, I'll know. Your next 72 hours will determine the rest of your life. 2 men appeared from the kitchen, not restaurant staff. The kind of men who didn't need to speak to communicate violence. They walked Cho toward the exit. He didn't resist. Didn't look back. The door closed behind them with a final click. When the door closed, Yejuan turned back to the assembled staff. 17 faces stared at him with expressions ranging from shock to relief to lingering fear. He let them process what they'd just witnessed. Let the reality settle that their tormentor was gone. Then he spoke. What happened here was my failure. His voice cut through the silence. I didn't see it. I should have. That ends now. He gestured to one of his men who'd remained behind. Not muscle, but a sharp-dressed accountant type carrying a leather briefcase. The man opened it on the bar, revealing stacks of banded cash. Mr. Cho has 72 hours to pay what he owes, Yejuan continued. But you're not waiting 72 hours. You're getting your money tonight. Every dollar he took, doubled, as promised. A murmur rippled through the staff. The accountant pulled out the blue ledger, Cho's meticulous record of his crimes, and opened it to the first page. When I call your name, come forward. One by one, they approached. The 19-year-old busser who'd had his neck grabbed, $3,000 became $6. The hostess who'd paid in the parking lot, $4,200 became $84. Each person received an envelope with their name on it, cash inside, and a quiet nod from Yejuan that said more than words could. This will not happen again, some cried. Some just stared at the money like they didn't believe it was real. No one said thank you. You didn't thank a man like Yejuan Payan for basic decency. You just accepted it and understood the new terms. Finally, the accountant called. Evelyn Griffith. Evelyn walked forward on legs that barely held her. She'd been doing math in her head. 30% of her wages and tips every week for 3 months. It had to be at least. The accountant handed her an envelope that felt impossibly thick. $9,200, he said simply. Evelyn's vision swam. That was more than she made in 6 months after Cho's cut. That was rent for half a year. That was food. That was her brother's school supplies. That was breathing room. Plus this. Yejuan stepped forward, holding a separate, smaller envelope. From my personal account. Interest for what my negligence cost you. She opened it with shaking hands. 5 $100 bills. Mr. Payan, her voice cracked. You were starving in my restaurant, he said quietly, only loud enough for her to hear. That dishonors both of us. This doesn't fix it, but it's a start. Their eyes met. In his, she saw something she hadn't expected, shame. Not for what Cho had done, but for what Yejuan himself had failed to prevent. Thank you, she whispered that he nodded once. Then, to the entire room, go home. Rest. Tomorrow, we start over. The staff filtered out into the night, clutching their envelopes, speaking in hushed tones that mixed disbelief with relief. Within 10 minutes, the dining room was empty except for the cleaning crew waiting in the kitchen. Yejuan caught Evelyn at the door. Stay. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't a threat either. Something in between. She turned back, the envelope still clutched in her hands like a life preserver. Sir, sit. He gestured to a table near the window, one of the good ones, where couples celebrated anniversaries and businessmen closed deals over $100 stakes. Evelyn sat. Because she'd learned not to question him, Yejuan walked to the kitchen. She heard his voice, low and brief, then the head chef's response. Yes, Mr. Payan. Right away. When Yejuan returned, he sat across from her. Not at the head of the table in the power position, but directly opposite, like they were equals. The gesture felt more unsettling than the interrogation in the corridor. You haven't eaten today, he said. I had some, don't lie. Not anymore. Evelyn's mouth closed. They sat in silence. Outside, the city moved. Cars passing, distant sirens, the hum of life that never stopped. Inside, the only sound was the kitchen coming alive one more time. 15 minutes later, the head chef emerged personally, carrying a single plate. He set it in front of Evelyn with the same reverence he'd show any VIP guest. Seared duck breast over roasted root vegetables, finished with a cherry reduction that caught the light like rubies. The kind of dish that cost $60 and required 3 days of prep. Chef's choice, the man said quietly. Then, meeting Evelyn's eyes, I'm sorry. I should have noticed. He left before she could respond. Evelyn stared at the plate. Her hands trembled in her lap. Eat, Yejuan said. Mr. Payan, this is too much. Eat. She picked up the fork, cut a small piece, brought it to her mouth. The moment the food touched her tongue, something inside her broke. Not from sadness, but from the sheer overwhelming reality of flavor, of richness, of enough. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. She took another bite. Then another. Yejuan watched in silence, his expression unreadable. He didn't touch his phone, didn't look away, just watched her eat with the same intense focus he brought to everything. Like this was the most important business he'd conduct all week. Halfway through, Evelyn paused. Why are you doing this? Because you work for me, he said simply. And I protect what's mine. It should have sounded possessive, controlling. But somehow, in the quiet of the empty restaurant, it sounded like a promise. She finished every bite. Monday morning. The restaurant felt different before a single word was spoken. The air was lighter. The kitchen staff arrived and actually made eye contact with each other. The hostess smiled. A real smile, not the customer service mask. When she clocked in at 10 a.m., before the lunch shift, Yejuan gathered everyone in the dining room again. This time, no one looked terrified. New structure, he announced without preamble. Floor manager position is open. I'm promoting from within. Someone who understands what leadership actually means. Every eye in the room found Evelyn. She stood near the bar, wearing a pressed white shirt instead of her server's uniform. Yejuan had sent it to her apartment the night before with a note. Asterisk wear this. Tomorrow you manage, you don't serve. Asterisk, Evelyn Griffith is your new floor manager, Yejuan continued. She answers to me directly. Any problems, you bring them to her. Any concerns, you bring them to her. And if anyone, asks you for money, for favors, for anything that feels wrong, you bring that to her immediately. He let that sink in, then added, there are no fees here. No taxes. No loyalty tests. You work, you get paid. That's the deal. Anyone who doesn't like it can leave right now. No one moved. Good. Get to work. The staff dispersed. But this time the energy was different. Purposeful. At the family meal that night, Evelyn sat with them, not hiding in the storage closet, not pretending she'd eaten earlier. She filled her plate and ate while discussing the evening's reservations. And when the new busser looked nervous about taking a second helping, she pushed the pan toward him. Eat. That's what it's here for. Around 8 p.m., Yejuan emerged from his office to do his usual walkthrough. The staff still straightened when they saw him. Respect, not fear, but they didn't freeze anymore. The line cook plating halibut nodded a greeting. The sommelier asked if he'd like to try a new vintage. Small gestures, but they represented a seismic shift that Yejuan's path took him past the floor station where Evelyn was reviewing the reservation book, confirming tomorrow's private party. She'd gained weight already. Not much, but enough that her shirt fit properly. Her eyes were clearer, her movements more confident. She looked up as he approached. For a moment, they just regarded each other. The Mafia boss and the waitress who'd been starving in his kingdom. The man who'd built an empire on fear and the woman who'd shown him where that fear had rotted from within. Yejuan gave her a single nod. Brief, almost imperceptible, but Evelyn understood it perfectly. Asterisk, you're safe now. And anyone who tries to change that answers to me. Asterisk, she nodded back. Then Yejuan continued his walk, and Evelyn returned to her work, and the restaurant moved forward, still dangerous. Still wrapped in shadows, but no longer poisoned from the inside. Some monsters, it turned out, kept their promises.